Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of the House of the Dragon series premiere. Episode 1 aired last night on HBO. We have let it simmer. We have some takes on this episode.
Listen, okay, Game of Thrones, the journey was so good. The end of it, very questionable. Lots of us weren't fans of it. But here we are now with House of the Dragon. Sort of, is this like the redemption of that whole finale disaster or not? Or are most people really looking at it as two separate things? I mean, really, this show is taking place 172 years in the past before Daenerys is even born. So really, we should be looking at it as two different shows, in my opinion.
You are correct. However,
There will be comparisons. There
I
absolutely will be.
I know that everybody is going to just be like, okay, it's this, that, or whatever compared to Game of Thrones. And I mean, listen, I don't love everything about the end of Game of Thrones. I don't like how it was rushed. I don't like how Daenerys' like character transformation came almost out of nowhere. But like, I didn't hate everything about the finale as much as some other people. I just wanted this to be decent, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, this was a really good premiere. I was very happy with a lot of it. And what I like about it the most is that this can introduce a whole new audience to this world. Because if you haven't seen Game of Thrones, it doesn't matter. It's completely okay. They have found a way that, because this is so far in the past, if you have not seen Game of Thrones, you can still watch this and enjoy this. And I think that that's brilliant.
Well, before we go further into anything more on House of the Dragon, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. We will be here talking through all things Targaryen. We'll see what other new characters kind of enter the mix here moving forward, and we don't want you to miss any of that.
Also, follow us over on Instagram at Matt and Jess TV. Okay,
All right.
so here's the one sort of Game of Thrones comparison. It's not even a comparison. So there's been sort of some wishy-washiness from people behind the show that were like, oh, this is Game of Thrones. It's that world. You should expect lots of like violence and sex. It's still sort of that same, world. And that makes sense. And it's 172 years in the past. So it's probably worse. There's probably more of that going
Yeah.
on, I would think, in this world. But then they kind of flipped flopped back on that and came out with a statement where they're kind of like, oh, there's some, but we dialed it back. And I'm just like, first of all, you shouldn't have dialed it back. This is Game of Thrones, and I might be on an island on this, but you've already created this world, and in this world, there is a lot of violence, there is a lot of sex. So if you're going to watch this show, you need to go into this show knowing that that's the way that it is. Then they're going to be like, hey, we dialed it back for those of you who were like, too much. I'm like, all right, well, we'll go into this and see how much you dialed it back. None at all. You did not dial it back. Good for you.
This is what the show is. It's wrong for us to go into this assuming that it's going to be anything different than Game of Thrones was when it comes to violence and sex on screen. That's the world of the show. If you move away from that, you are no longer authentic to what the world is, and you can't censor something that is violent, that is difficult, because that sort of speaks to what characters are going through. That informs how they act, and I think that I mean, we even see a lot of that's with Rhaenyra, and just in the premiere itself, that if she did not live in this world where there was violence, there was sexism, like her being a potential heir wouldn't be that big of a story point. Like, it's needed.
It is needed, and I think in general, I mean, storytelling needs to be authentic to what it's going to be. And because they've already created this universe, the Game of Thrones universe, and this is set in the same universe, you can't all of a sudden dial it back. So even though they were saying we've dialed it back, they didn't dial it back. This felt like the same universe. So I was glad to see that.
Yeah. There was only like a couple of times in Game of Thrones where I thought, especially, it's like, okay, even for this universe, this is a little much. Like, there was that one scene, I don't even remember what season it was, but there was like a conversation, and there was like some people doing some stuff in the background that went on for like minutes on end, and I was just like, really, guys, really?
We had something like that here as well, where, Prince Damon was giving his speech at that pub, and there are things still just kind of happening. People are stopped in mid motion, letting him speak. I was like, okay, well, this is the same universe. This makes sense. It feels fluid.
The thing that I think I really enjoyed the most about this episode, despite like its authenticity to Game of Thrones, was just also it was a lot more focused than Game of Thrones, where I feel like as much as I really liked the first few seasons of that show, and the first few seasons were phenomenal, there was a lot of we're gonna spend 5 to 10 minutes over here, then we're gonna go all the way over here and spend another 5 to 10 minutes, then we're gonna go over here, and it jumped around so much, and it was so ambitious that it was really kind of hard to keep track of who everybody was, what was going on, how far characters were from each other, and it's like here almost all of it is sort of centralized around King's Landing, centralized around a central family. It's a lot more of an intimate story so far.
Yeah, which, I really appreciate as well. There was some complicated moments with Game of Thrones, which is fine. I'm
Yeah.
fine to have a complicated story, but it is nice to sort of focus in on one family, and one family that we didn't get to know a ton about really deeply in Game of Thrones, because there was only two Targaryens left, and that was it. And the brother didn't last that
No.
long. Spoilers for people who haven't seen that. But I mean, here we are where they're in power, they're flourishing. There's lots of Targaryens at this point. So it's a very different world within the world that we already know. And I'm pretty excited to get a deeper dive into this family.
Let's just start here with King Viserys Targaryen, because this may not even be a hot take, but you don't actually suck. Like, this is one of the few times that we've had sort of a ruler in King's Landing over the course of this entire series who feels like his head is on, like, reasonably straight. Like, he's willing to think outside the box, clearly. He's willing to look at Rhaenyra and say, okay, you can be a suitable heir. Like, he seems like he governs reasonably well. He looks at Daemon and he's like, oh, no. Like, he seems to be fairly smart and intelligent, which means something terrible is going to happen to him.
And he seemingly really cares about the realm and about the kingdom and about the people that he's governing, and he's willing to make very difficult sacrifices to ensure that this kingdom is still going to be able to be run well after he's gone. He knows that he needs to have a male heir. There's never been a female on the throne. His wife is pregnant again, and she's like, listen, I'm real sorry. I have brought you a daughter, and I have lost like 5 children. But this is the last time for me. Like, I don't want to do this any more times. If this is not the son that you want, sorry for your luck. And he's kind of like, okay, if that's the way that's got to be, that's the way it's got to be. And then he ends up in this awful place where he has to make a choice between potentially losing both his wife and his baby, or just sacrificing his wife to ensure that his child lives. And that's the decision that he makes. And I think it's not like you can look at it surface and be like, how could you do that? How could you let your wife die to, have your child live, or not, right? But like, how could you do that? But when you look at the bigger picture and what is underneath him, his whole kingdom, that if I don't have an heir and I don't have a son, then I'm letting all of these people down that are under my protection, that are under my rule, because they're going to end up with Daemon as their king. And that is going to be really bad. He's impulsive. He's going to, he could lead and rule with violence. This could be just really bad for all of these people. So I have to make this sacrifice. I feel that in her heart of hearts, my wife would make the sacrifice. He doesn't know for sure, but that's where he is with his mind, that he's like, I have to get this heir out, and it's a boy, and they only live for a couple of hours.
and Damon, you're such a jerk with your air for a day nonsense that you're like spewing out there. Like what? Okay, see, I love Matt Smith. I will always think of the Doctor when I see Matt Smith. He was the first Doctor I really got into in Doctor Who, so he's got that special place in my heart. But it is like you went from playing someone so good and so wholesome, everybody loves the Doctor, to like this guy. Why are you so good at playing like this smarmy, just like horrific human being who's spouting off about heirs for a day, who is like already like partying, who has no problem like just killing anybody? Like, how could you?
Listen, we've seen Matt Smith, for all of you who've seen The Crown, play Prince Philip, and he does play that sort of smarmy guy very well. This is a very good role for him, and so far 10 out of 10. He is fantastic because there's also, and we saw it very briefly, this little bit of vulnerability there where he kind of just isn't, he's worried that he's not good enough. Is he going to be able to do this? Sort of that moment where he's just like, he's in that house that we will not say here with that woman that we won't get into too much detail with, where she's kind of trying to like help bring up his ego a little bit, or a little bit of his confidence, because you can see that he's really in his head about all of this, where it's like, oh man, if there's no throne or there's no heir, am I going to be good enough for the throne? Are people going to listen to me? Am I going to be loved or revered or hated? Or what is this really going to be for me? And am I even really going to get this chance? Like, they really want to make it that I can't be king.
And you shouldn't be king because you would not be good at it. And whereas Rhaenyra, she may actually be good at it. Like, it seems like she's got a good command of the people around her. She seems to be, fairly smart. She's kind of fairly level-headed, I guess, despite her princess status. Like, she's got, like, her good friend in Alicent Hightower, who we see. And I've already seen some stories on this, by the way, online. I did a little bit of looking. It's like, Rhaenyra and Alicent, is there something there? Like, are they just friends? Is there something a little
they
bit?
Ain't just friends.
Yeah, there's something more going on here. And
oh yes, there is. Absolutely. That moment where they were kind of laying out and learning about history, and Rhaenyra's just like, nah, I'm happy where I am, right here in your lap, kind of thing. I was like, okay, that's cute.
Yeah, this. I feel so bad because this is Game of Thrones, and I already have kind of a dark sense here as to where things are going, because we got good old Otto being like, my daughter, go and make the king feel better after his wife just died.
Listen, it's still Game of Thrones, right? You still want to move yourself up in this world.
You are going to make this very, very young woman marry the king, her friend, who she's clearly into, her dad. This is bad. This is messed up.
It is messed up, but this is this show, and this is this universe. I mean, we even had, Rhaenyra's mother talking about that at the beginning before she died, where she was sitting down with her daughter and was kind of like, I know you want to ride dragons and sort of get out there and see the world, and not like Arya Stark, where I'm going to be a warrior, but she's kind of like, you need to kind of curb that, because you're going to be where I am having babies, because unfortunately that's part of our duty to continue on our bloodline, make sure that we have heirs and that we continue on. Like, yeah, it sucks, but stiff up her lip.
This is, I think, an episode that's really sort of asking one big question, and this is how does House Targaryen go from this establishment that clearly, seems to be fairly up and up with a good king, with sort of some reasonable people around, to like the complete and utter cluster you-know-what that we see like throughout Game of Thrones, where they have no power and Daenerys is working to get a lot of it back. And it's like, to me, sort of, whatever the king does next, or whatever he's sort of pushed into doing next, I think that's going to be kind of the spark that lights the fuse that's just going to start to slowly burn everything.
Yeah, I agree. I think overall this premiere really set the stage well. We have all the players. We know sort of where it is now that, Daemon is out. Rhaenyra's in. People are pledging their allegiance to the king to be like, yes, we accept who you want to put in as the heir, but it's not going to work out this easily. There's already a bit of a weird relationship going on with Daemon and Rhaenyra anyways. We'll see kind of how it all plays out. But so far, they've really set it out really well.
Yeah, I'm even with being mad about the end of Game of Thrones, it's like I'm all in again. It's like they managed to just rope me right back in. I'm so excited to see where we go from here.
I will say that watching Rhaenyra going on that dragon and kind of going over King's Landing did give me a bit of like flashbacks to that ending of Game of Thrones where I was like, oh no, oh my goodness, because man, that was really like the turning point for me in that final season where I was like, wow, we just watched Daenerys go through all these seasons of building an army and getting here for her to just burn it to the ground because
I'd block that out. I refuse to acknowledge that episode is part of history. And with that, I am happier. This is a prequel. I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, I think that's really great that they have put it so far in the past that if you are new to this show, it is going to be fine. If you're new to the universe, you've never seen Game of Thrones, it will be okay for you. Star Wars is kind of doing the same thing with all of their series that they've been doing, that they're kind of making it that if you're not that familiar with Star Wars or anything like that, you haven't watched the previous sort of movies or whatever, you can come in and you will still be okay. You can enjoy it. It is made for everybody.
Well, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss anything we've got to say about this show moving forward. Follow us on Instagram at Matt and Jess TV, and we will see you here next time.